Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Branner Town Council's full council meeting held on Monday, the 13th of February. Okay, we'll start with item number 1, apologies for absence. We've got Jane, that was it. Okay. Item number 2, declaration of interest. Is everybody still looking at these two? Okay. Item number 3 is to receive a report from Squadron Leader Geary. He's informed us he's not coming tonight, and I don't think he's given us anything.
No.
No. Okay. Item number 4, to receive a report from Suffolk Constabulary. Now, he is on his way, but he is a bit delayed, so we'll slot him in when he appears, if that's all right.
Absolutely fine.
Okay. Item number 5, an update, a report on the phlebotomy services in Branner. Said that, right?
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes.
I propose that we move agenda item number 5 into the public forum. Do I have a seconder?
Well, yeah. I think it should be open to the public to speak.
Well, I would quite happily propose that we suspend standing orders because it's one subject just for everybody's benefit, rather than, and then the public can still talk, and then it will keep it nice and easy as we go on. And that was the advice we've been given today, to suspend standing orders for this part.
Well, the thing is, Chairman, I've got a phlebotomy report as well, and I think it should be all rolled into one. I don't think you should split it up, have phlebotomy agenda 5 and phlebotomy agenda 10. Believe me, it's better if it goes into the public forum. And I've had a seconder. So
Okay, we'll vote on it and then we'll move on to the next
yeah.
after that. Okay?
So if I can open the debate, please, Mr. Chairman. I've got a seconder.
Yeah, we debate it or we
You've
just
got a
vote
seconder
for it.
for suspending standing orders, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So we're suspending standing orders. Or what have you seconded there, Norman?
Well, I think...
That was to move it to another item.
Well, I think I probably second potentially moving it to 10, but
yeah.
the alternative is just as acceptable.
Yeah, that's what my proposal is, just to move it 10, and then that's in the public domain. The public can, and we've still got a limited 3 minutes on it. It'll be better, believe me. That's all I'm asking.
Councillor, and then we'll...
That it all goes into 10.
You,
Chair, if we suspend standing orders now, that effectively brings the public into this debate.
yes, it does, yes.
Yeah.
But it's just on this debate item only.
I think the phlebotomy should be.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
on the agenda.
and
It's
it's
been asked
important enough for the
It's been
general
asked to put
public
on
to
the
be
agenda,
involved.
and I think it's fair to let that carry on the agenda where it is.
Okay?
So I'm going to propose we suspend standing orders. Okay, and we'll move into a vote for that for me, please. Those in favour of suspending standing orders for this part? Okay. Those against that? Those abstaining from that vote? Okay. I'm going to hand over to Councillor Palmer.
What went on there?
Thank you, Chair. Very much indeed. Well, Margaret Marks, who's the former chair of West Suffolk Council, she's a member of the One Haverhill Partnership Group. She's also a member of the Haverhill Town Council, and she's on Suffolk County Council for the Health and Scrutiny Committee. West Suffolk Council, she's on the Overroad Scrutiny Committee, and also is on West Suffolk Standards Committee. Margaret has a particular interest in matters involving health and social care, and she volunteered to travel all the way over here tonight to give us a talk on phlebotomy services and the state of the health of the health service in this area. Yes, that's what she's come over to do tonight. She's volunteered to come over to give this talk tonight. So I'd like to introduce Margaret to the table, where she can give all the members and the public an update on the scrutiny, on the health, public health and the phlebotomy service. Please.
Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Palmer. I am aware that Councillor Cannock and Councillor Palmer have both met with Liz Maloney last week. I think Councillor Cannock, am I right? And
You're quite right, but I will press Mr. Palmer with the meeting he had, because it's all a bit vague. But do carry on.
So if I can just put some context into this. So phlebotomy services, which I'm sure you're all familiar with the term phlebotomy, it's the blood taking or surgeries. are challenged across all of rural Suffolk. It's not unique to Brandon, and I sit on Health Scrutiny for Suffolk, so one of the reasons that I was invited here this evening is because I cover Health Scrutiny for Suffolk, for West Suffolk. You know, I represent West Suffolk on the Health Scrutiny panel, so we cover all of health and social care, which is at the moment, as you can imagine, in some degree of change and complexity. So phlebotomy services, if I could put some context into them, whilst taking blood is not difficult, and it's not a difficult skill to learn, so most nurses can do it, certainly most doctors can do it. The problem being, if you have a designated phlebotomist, say at West Suffolk Hospital, all of you may have been aware that at one time you could go there, take a dinner ticket, whatever they call it, just ticket, sit outside the door and have it. Now you have to wait 2.5 weeks because the churn for these members of staff is now 18 months maximum. They don't stay in the job because I guess it's pretty boring just taking blood day after day. So what they do is they either want to improve their skills and move through the system, or they leave. And that's creating a massive problem in terms of numbers. With regard to doctors' surgeries, the number and acuity of patients, and I know a lot of you won't understand this because obviously if you can't see a doctor, you know, you see it down that tunnel, but actually the acuity of patients that's being seen by doctors now and the number of patients is unprecedented, and it's a breaking point. So their staff, unfortunately, often get pulled off to doing other things. So that's the second element. All doctors' surgeries have contracts with the NHS. They are not part of the NHS. All doctors' surgeries are private practice, and they always have been. That's not new. So they have a contract with the NHS, and they contract to do a certain number of things for the NHS, and all of them will have a number of bleeds to do within that contract, and most of them are not meeting that contractual obligation at the moment. So those obligations are being fostered out to other places, as you know, to the Mildenhall Hub, to West Suffolk Hospital, or to other places where they can do it. So at the moment, there is a massive review going on of phlebotomy across Suffolk as a whole, and at the moment they are negotiating firstly with all the GPs to say, right, what can you do to improve the services across all of the rural areas? In Brandon, you have 6 GP practices which form a primary care network. Here, I think they're all grouped together too. I think it falls under the Bury Primary Care Network, and so they will negotiate as a body as to how many more bleeds they will pick up. In Essex, it's a whole different ballgame. They've got a secondary provider who does it, and again, I have asked Liz to have a word with that secondary provider, because if they can manage it in North East Essex, they can jolly well start managing here in Suffolk. We shouldn't be differentiated against. The other problems, of course, are people saying, well, why can't we do it back in a village hall? Why can't we do it in the community centre? You have to be where there are the robust IT systems that allow you to access the patient data for you to upload the data and also take the data on. It has to be a secure system. So these people can only really operate where such a system is available to them. And indeed, the sports centre, I think, now is working with health, so they may well have access to System 1, which is what's required in Suffolk. The other problems, of course, is you can go to places like Cambridge, but the information transfer between Cambridge and Suffolk is absolutely dire. We talk about integrated care. I'm not quite sure yet which part of it's integrated, because certainly from where I sit, it doesn't feel very good. So they are looking at local enhanced services, so they are looking at GP surgeries and asking them to improve their levels of taking blood, because, you know, a lot of the people who live in rural areas are often quite old, and a lot of them will often have to have a blood taken quite frequently, and to make them have this journey is really terribly unfair, and we actually completely acknowledge that. They are also looking at doing something about transfer, patient transfer between here and Mildenhall, but we haven't heard yet whether they're going to look at community services. There's a community transport service, whether they're going to talk to them, I'm not sure, but they are looking at that as well. So the other problem is, if you only have one person taking blood, this poses a massive risk to the service. We see staff going on sick such a lot of the time now. So you might, your booking to have the blood taken at the surgery might be next week, and suddenly she goes sick and there's nobody else to take it. So resilience is not inbuilt here, and that's not good either. Although I understand that there may have been some recruitment recently, but unfortunately Liz has gone on holiday to France and she won't get back to me till the 20th, so I can't confirm that. Training's not an issue, it's not a difficult thing to train in. So these are really what's going on at the moment. Liz has applied for increased funding for phlebotomy, but I have to tell you, every single service in the NHS and all of the support services to it are applying for additional funding. So the squeeze on budgets is just enormous, whether that will come across. My argument to that will be that it's a definitive service, it's a diagnostic service, and if you don't get the diagnosis, then obviously you don't get treatment. So it's really, really important that we get that put right. So I will support that business case. And I'm afraid that's not, that really is kind of the best news that I can give you, which isn't wonderful. But to say that there is an awful lot going on, there is a lot of, the one question I did ask, which I'm waiting for a response on, I said how many bleeds are not being carried out at the surgeries, how many are having to leave the area from here, and they are doing some research on that and they're supposed to be coming back to me, but they did tell me this morning they have not yet got those figures. So it would be nice to know. It's going to be difficult because it's going to be very mercurial, different weeks are going to have different numbers, but on average in a month it would be interesting to know how many people are having to leave this area, and actually what does that compare with what they're actually doing in the area, because I think without those statistics you haven't got much to work on. So I was surprised that they didn't have those in the first place. So not the greatest news. Obviously health is undergoing an enormous amount of change at the moment with the integration of health and social care, but that will only work if all of the systems are strengthened, and at the moment they're certainly not. So I think I'll give way to Councillor Buchanan.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a few questions for Councillor Palmer here. Mr. Palmer, where and when did you have a meeting with the primary care people? Please, if you could tell us.
West Suffolk House.
West Suffolk House, we had the West Suffolk House, and the date on that was,
Okay, West Suffolk House.
because Margaret was there with me as well.
Right, so West Suffolk House, what date was that? You must have some details there, surely. Okay. Okay, there's no details. So
But only because I didn't want my diary.
let's move on to the next question.
It was about 4 weeks ago on a Friday.
That was about 4 weeks ago on a Friday, okay.
I haven't got the exact date.
Well, I had a meeting with them and I can tell you the exact time and exact date.
Yes, I can with my diary.
Well, just wait a few minutes, then will you pick them up?
Dave, if you could tell me who was present, perhaps that would be more
Could
help.
you voice I'll ask your questions to the chair, please.
Yes. Okay. Who was present?
Who was present? No, but yeah, okay. There was Margaret, of course, myself, my wife, Mrs. Elizabeth Mahoney, and Sophie Bennett, was it?
No, Sophie Martin.
That was who was present at the meeting, and that was held at West Suffolk House, room 13, at 10 o'clock in the
I
morning.
haven't got the date with me, and I apologise.
Okay,
I haven't
4
got my
weeks
diary
ago.
with me.
Chairman, if I may, why wasn't anybody from Brandon Town Council or any other Brandon Town councillor invited to come along to a meeting? One question. And why did you think it was necessary to invite a Haverhill district councillor along, who, may I add, Haverhill has got a full phlebotomy service and we haven't? So a couple of questions there, David.
Well,
why wasn't anybody else invited from Brandon Town
First of
Council?
all, I was asked in July by a member of my ward to try and restore that service in Brandon. So I was acting on behalf of a ward member, and I've been working on that since July by contacting the PALS team, the Swan Surgery Group, MP Matt Hancock.
That's not what I asked, Dave. I asked why weren't other people from Brandon invited to the meeting?
Because I was the only one dealing with it.
Because I invited, the meeting I invited the clerk, I also invited another district councillor. But
Did you invite me?
no, because,
Well,
no,
here we are then.
certainly not. I just want to move on, if I may, Mr. Chairman. I just want to move on to the letter what was published in the Brandon Life this Friday. Friday. Now, this is a letter signed by Mr. Palmer, Councillor Palmer. This letter is vague and ambiguous, and in not your words, Dave, this was written by the primary care people and you put your name on it. And I was offered the same service and I declined it, simply because I didn't want to look fraudulent, and neither did I want to be in their pockets. Now, in the short-term resolution here, you mention to agree temporary commissioning arrangements. What does that mean, Councillor Palmer?
That means exactly what you said.
No, I want an explanation on it.
That means exactly what you
Right,
said.
well, let me tell you what it means, because later on in my phlebotomy report, I will tell the people what that means. Because what's happened here, you're in their pockets on this one, and we've been put away on this one big time. And admit it, Dave, that you did not write that letter. These are not your words, and I was offered the same service. I think it's a disgrace.
Councillor Cannick, that's enough now with that one. Okay, major point. If you'd like to just come, give more.
I'd like to respond to why I was invited to that meeting, because as the health scrutiny representative for West Suffolk, it is my responsibility and my role to attend all of those meetings. Councillor Cannick, I find your rather attacking behaviour offensive. I think it's not appropriate. And I would ask that you moderate your language across this table.
Out of courtesy, I invited the clerk and somebody else to come to the meeting.
Councillor Cannick,
Out of courtesy.
it is any councillor's right to ask for a meeting, and it is any councillor's right to ask for information in respect of parishioners within their ward. And that is what Councillor Palmer did. He approached me and he asked me if I could help to understand the phlebotomy services. I would also like to correct you about having a full phlebotomy service in Haverhill. We have exactly the same problem as you have here, and our clients go to Cambridge and they go to Bury St Edmunds, and we actually have a really poor service to Bury St Edmunds, and it's a challenge.
Well, I spoke to your mayor this afternoon, and he tells me there are no people in Haverhill who are referred to other towns or villages. That's what I heard today.
Well, I'm afraid our mayor is not a district councillor. The mayor in Haverhill would not know about health at all. I can absolutely confirm that, and I can absolutely tell you, yes, our doctor surgeries do have phlebotomy services.
Thank
in
you.
the same way as yours commission.
Well, in the greatest respect, Margaret, have you any good news for us, yes or no?
Yes, I have the good news that there is a full review, and a really robust review, that is going on across the whole of Suffolk in respect of phlebotomy services.
Well, I went to a meeting for these people, and I haven't got any good news, and I will report shortly, and I will tell you exactly how, and I've got witnesses who were there.
Could I ask you please to refrain shouting across the table? It's inappropriate and it is rude. Your behaviour needs moderating.
I still don't understand why we've had a district councillor from Haverhill to come over here and lecture us on phlebotomy. We know what the problem is.
I am not here as a district councillor for Haverhill. I am here as the representative on health scrutiny for the whole of Suffolk.
Well,
and that has been my role for the last 4 years.
Fix the problem then.
Well, I'm attempting to try and moderate the problem for you, and I suggest you moderate your behaviour. Sorry, Chair.
That's fine, absolutely fine. Oh, I think Councillor Everington, and then we got Councillor Ridgewell.
I'm ashamed of this. I would like to keep to the point, and this is pure electioneering. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Councillor Ridgewell.
Yes, I had a blood test on the 22nd at 10 o'clock at the surgery down the High Street. Now, why can't that lady who takes or gentleman, whoever it's going to be, why can't that person take the blood for 3 days down there and 3 days at the Bury Road surgery?
May I respond? So, community services here, the GPs are independent practices. They've never been part of the NHS. So when they hire people, so it's quite difficult to explain the way the NHS works, but basically doctors' surgeries are independent practices and they hire their own staff, and for every patient they have on their books, they get about £159 a year. That's totally what they get. So they have to manage their service within that. So the community services, which are run away from the doctor's surgeries, in Brandon they're run by the NSFT, and so they are run separately. So they would be separately financed as well. So that's the first point. The second problem with phlebotomy is your blood samples, in a timely way, have to get to a laboratory. And in Suffolk, we have a company called ERS. They travel around the whole of Suffolk, and they pick up the samples and they take them to the laboratories, which you can imagine. I can't remember how many surgeries and how many places they have to collect from, but it's pretty onerous. So if your surgery can't do blood taking after 2 o'clock in the afternoon, that's because the pickup's already happened and therefore your blood would be useless. The other problem is the phlebotomist at the surgery may well not be a dedicated phlebotomist. She may, I don't actually know because I haven't asked that question, she may have other roles. So she may be, even if she's a care assistant, she might be doing long-term medical condition tests with people which are done on a yearly basis, rotationally. So her role may not be purely phlebotomy. And in fact, we try to discourage it being purely phlebotomy because it's pretty boring and then people leave, and the last thing we want them to do is to leave. So there are so many challenges within the service. So that, I hope that partly answers your question. I think really, you're right, we need more people who are prepared to take blood, even as part of their daily work, so that they don't get bored with it and it can be slotted in the day. But the surgeries have to work that among their other priorities. My view is it's very important to take bloods, it's a diagnostic test, and without that diagnostic test, you don't get your treatment. So to me, I think that's paramount, and I am pushing that forward on scrutiny, and certainly I'm talking to Liz Maloney, she's heading up, and she's very senior, and she is heading up this, and she's robustly doing it. She's put a really good business case together. So I am hopeful that things will improve, but finances in the NHS at the moment are dire, frankly. So I'm sorry I can't answer that more robustly. I hope that helps.
Okay with that? Yeah? That answered that one? Yeah?
Can I just...
Yeah, just want to make a comment, yeah.
Right. I'm sort of fortunate that I'm going to have a blood test. I've only just recently come out of hospital after 4 weeks, and they've been taking my blood morning, noon and night while I've been in hospital. So it'll be the first time I'll be having a test down the high street. I would find it very awkward to go to Bury to have a blood test. So I'm fortunate for there. But there are loads of people. I took several people last year to Bury Hospital for a blood test, also to Mildenhall, to the new place, in Newmarket. It is unfortunate for a lot of people if they are a patient of Bury Road surgery, if they've got to go all the way to Bury for a blood test, which only takes a few minutes to do. I know people who live in Thetford Road, they have to pay £40 for a taxi to take them there and pay another £40 to bring them back. So it is unfortunate for these people, and there must be certain people here that have to have a blood test, but they're a patient at Bury Road, you know, and it is hard. If you're not well, it's not very nice if you're not well, that you've got to make this 20-odd mile journey.
So absolutely, you have my complete and absolute support on this, and it is something that I have reflected strongly back to scrutiny, and we are asking for this to be not only reviewed but robustly. Something has to happen. I will talk to Ed Garrett as well, who's head of Integrated Care Board, because I absolutely agree with you. It is an enormous challenge and it's not acceptable. As I said, Liz Maloney, in the short term, she is trying to find a way of improving the transport between here and the Mildenhall hub. And even if they can increase the bleed numbers that they do at the Mildenhall hub, that will help to improve the service that you have. Every step in the right direction is a good step, and I think we have to be grateful for every step that people are trying to make, because this is just one of the many things that are challenged right now with the NHS, and for that, you know, I am deeply sorry, and I'm really sorry that your people are having to go through that. But you have my absolute support on this.
Okay, Councillor Whittam.
Thank you, Chair. Could I ask you, Councillor Marks, if you would agree with me that perhaps this situation comes from successive governments underfunding our National Health Service, along with other national necessities, such as the Army, Navy, Air Force, our steel production, our NHS, everything in this country has been underfunded, not by the current government, but by the current government and their predecessors, their predecessors and their predecessors. And this has been going on since the early 1980s. And what we have now is a situation created by that underfunding. Would you agree with that?
May I answer that in a more full way?
Yes,
So,
please.
if I may, if we take ourselves back to 1958 when the NHS started, our life expectancy was 68 years. It's now 86. The acuity of people being treated is unbelievable. The cost of that treatment is exponential. It has risen out of all proportion. I'll give you a day in the calendar. On the 19th of December last year, the ambulance service took 2,000 more calls that day than on the same day the year before. And that pattern is repeated and repeated. I can share with you the House Scrutiny report that I'm putting together for overview and scrutiny. It's a very brutal report, and I'm very honest in my reporting, which I hope you'll agree. I don't hide facts and the figures. This isn't a political debate tonight, and I'm not prepared to make it overtly political, but what I would say to you is, of course, the NHS massively needs more funding. But I honestly think if we ask the people of this country if they were prepared to pay a little more tax, ring-fenced for health, I honestly think people would say yes, because without our health, everything else pales into insignificance. And we have never had a government brave enough to do that. So I absolutely agree that the health service needs more money. But it's not just about more money, Councillor Whittam. It's about prevention, it's about community support, which is, and I'm going to mention here Councillor Lekanek, because Suffolk County Council has funded 3 coordinators to bring people into the community. They're calling them community catalysts, who will help support people in their community. And yet, I bet Councillor Lekanek probably has not discussed this with this committee, and it's very important. We have not even heard about it in West Suffolk, and yet Suffolk County Council are funding these 3 people. Why haven't we heard about it? If we do not, this is the whole problem of health right now, starts on the ground floor. And at the moment, all health ever does strategises. It goes halfway down a strategy, it can't cope with the strategy, and nobody on the ground, the patients, get properly treated. And I bang on about this at every meeting I go to. I'm not there politically. I don't couch my words. The people we need to be supporting are the people on the ground, and that's why I'm very passionate about health. I spent 20 years on an ambulance. I loved every moment of what I did. And it's about people, and it's about caring for them. But we need to care for them holistically. Health does not begin and end with your body. It begins with everything else that is going on around those people. Suffolk County Council have put the funding for 3 people, one in Waveney, one in West Suffolk and one in East Suffolk, I think the other one is, to come out and educate the public and get those people employed in our communities. We're not even hearing about it in West Suffolk, and I think that person's been in post at least 6 months. So I will ask Councillor Lekanek if he would be kind enough to take that back to Suffolk County Council and find out why that's not being implemented locally, because if we stop people getting sick, we take some of the pressure off the services. And we have the ability to do that through these people, and we're not doing it. So I could go on all day about health and the challenges and the finances, and how integrated care can only work if every part of the system is strong enough to take their bit of responsibility. And the only way you do that is by more employment, more training and more money. But it needs to be across every part of the system. Otherwise, how can you integrate it? Because at the moment, they're all broken. So I hope that's the answer to your question, Councillor.
Well, yeah, thank you. I may come back and in some way support what you say. Many people around this room will know that I'm a retired first level nurse. I worked initially on qualification at an acute surgical unit, a surgical ward, where the staff were under great pressure, enormous pressure, because of lack of staff. And I won't mention her name, but she will go down in my history as one of the greatest nursing sisters I've ever known. Complained to the hospital management. We need a minimum of 4 new nurses on the ward. What did the management do? They employed 2 managers to manage the existing staff better. One came from Tesco's and one from some other place. They had no idea. And the cost of those, both on £60,000 salaries then and a company car, or in those days it was a Crown car, and they had no idea and they made no difference whatsoever. But their salaries would have funded 6 new nurses. And what Councillor Marks has just said to us about the 3 bodies so-called employed by Suffolk County to work,
Suffolk County Council.
Suffolk County Council, yeah, rather reminds me of my experience I've just related to you. Where are they? They're drawing money out of the NHS and doing nothing.
They should have been here talking to all
Absolutely.
of you about that service, and perhaps Councillor McKenna could ask. Her name is Veronica Breeze, and perhaps you could ask her if she would come and explain to your council what she can offer on the ground.
Give him a name.
Yeah, Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we've gone off a bit of a tangent here. Without warning and without consultation, the service at the Forest Surgery was cut. Now, I'll refer back to what Councillor Ridgewell was talking about. Brandon Medical Practice has still got a full phlebotomy service in the High Street. And I think the difference is that the accountants at Forest Surgery have got more sway over the doctors. It's all about money. Because when I had this particular meeting with the primary care service, the first thing they said to me was, we're a business and we need to make money. And that was the attitude of them right through the meeting. And I think Councillor Whittam will confirm that. And no, I'm not electioneering today. I'm taking this seriously. If anybody's an electioneering, perhaps that could be some of the Conservatives around the table. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Moore.
Oh, yes, thank you, Chair. I noted from Councillor Mechanic that he said about the phlebotomist in the High Street, why can't he or she be up here 3 days and 3 days down there? Well, I do know the person in the High Street, and I stand to be corrected. It's a lady, and I do know her husband is seriously ill, and he has a brain tumour. And
True.
my point is that too much pressure, you could lose another phlebotomist overnight. And that is possibly why she's down the High Street and doesn't come up any further.
Any other questions before we carry on with the meeting?
Can I reply to one from Victor
Yes,
Mechanic?
sure.
Okay, well, the piece in the Brains of Life, the second piece in there, that he said was not written by me, I'm afraid, no, it wasn't written by me. It wasn't written by me. That wasn't written by Elizabeth Mahoney either. That was written by my wife. Because she took notes at the meeting, right, on my behalf. So she wrote that, and Elizabeth Mahoney read it before I published it. Okay, so that's the truth.
That's fine with that. Okay. I want to say thank you very much.
You're very welcome. I'm sorry, I would just like to point out, I do not come here under any political banner. I am actually currently the Deputy Mayor, and I have been in the civic life now for 10 years, and in that role, it is a non-political role. So I would like to make that point. My role here was to try and inform you as to what's going on and answer any questions you have about health, but also to try and help you to improve your services here, and I will continue to press for that.
I think we just have one more quick question. I'll just see a hand. Was it you, Norman?
Well, I was just wondering if you, when you go away from here, whether you actually start a campaign to get a dedicated tax for the NHS.
A dedicated
Tax for the NHS.
I will be perfectly honest, I would love that to happen. I just don't think any political body, I don't care who they are, I just don't think they're minded to ask that question.
Depends what proportion of the public would like it, doesn't it?
And I think, you know, there was a great comment made to me the other day by a surgeon, and he said, most of your health service, the amount of time you take from the health service is generally in the last 5 years of your life, regardless of how long you live. I had to think about that quite a lot, but he's probably right. So I guess if we knew how long we were going to live, we would all be voting to say we would pay our extra 5 pence in the pound and have it ring-fenced. I do think it is something that needs to happen, and I think it, you know, without health, everything else pales into insignificance. So, but I would make one plea, and that is, please, the people who work in health, they do it for the right reason. They're there for the right reason. And the abuse they're getting at the moment, I'm not talking about the managers, I'm talking about the clinical staff who treat you and care for you. Please show them some respect and kindness, because they are struggling beyond words right now. And we will simply, it will be a self-fulfilling prophecy if the abuse continues, because it is so, so unpleasant. So I do make that plea to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll go back to four, yeah. Okay, we're going to now go back to number 4 as the police officers have timely arrived.
That's the report.
Yeah, you can introduce yourselves, because I know we've met, but I wouldn't know your full names.
I'm Pete Maxfield. I'm a sergeant at Milton Hall. I'm in my 19th year. I know I don't look old enough to become 19 years, but I am really 32.
Yeah.
God, that's bad maths as well, isn't it? So I started my career 19 years ago in Forest Heath, covering Brandon. I lived in Brandon for 11 years myself as well. And I went into custody. I did 9 years working in custody, doing terrorism custody as well. And I was let out for good behaviour to come back to Forest Heath to work back on the SNC and Brandon, Lake and Heath Green, the area that is my responsibility. So I'm the person to blame for everything that's ever gone wrong in Brandon since I came back into this area. So I've been wanting to come back out and get this meeting underway. Graham will probably testify the fact that we've had numerous emails and either I can't make it or you cancel the meeting or something happens. So here we are, finally. A few subjects that you wanted me to mention, probably because there's been a few issues in town. First one, e-scooters. E-scooters we hate. E-scooters, I'd build a big pile of them and set fire to them myself and risk getting into trouble. They are a scourge on every single town up and down the country without any exception. What can we do about it as a police? It's a difficult subject, it really is, because it costs money. Okay, as an example, if we were to pop out here and we see one of these e-scooters, we could take that away into one of the, arrange for one of these companies, recovery companies, to house it, store it, and the person that owned it, or still owns it, is then able to go and collect it either the following day or however long, and they pay it. They don't pay it, Suffolk Police has to pay that to the recovery agent, so that's £100 or more per e-scooter. I'm speaking anecdotally, but I believe that Metpol did an operation a number of years ago to tackle the illegal use of e-scooters, and they gave up after 2 hours because they seized 680 within the first 2 hours. And I have family in London. I go down to North London, Walthamstow, and my goodness gracious me, you know, is everyone with e-scooters, every other person you see on e-scooters. I think we've lost the battle. All we can do is we just tackle it when it comes up. The contentious side I have to throw in is, are they any worse on the pavements than push bike? No, I don't think so. But likewise, I think those days of us telling kids not to ride on the pavements because the roads are more dangerous, I don't know. I'm not going to be the person that gets into that as a discussion. I use my discretion should that situation arise at that time. Okay, so that's the stance in relation to we can seize them. There is a little bit of a quirk in relation to how the legislation works on these e-scooters. They are passenger mechanically propelled vehicle, so you must have a licence, you must have insurance, all of those things on your driving licence. If you over the limit while you're riding an e-scooter, you can lose your driving licence as a consequence of that. And if you're driving a vehicle with no driving licence and no insurance, it goes into one of these recovery agents, and you have to provide a certificate of insurance and a driving licence to show that you can actually do it. So that's one thing. People that don't want to bother with either of those, they just leave it in there and costs are almost recovered. With the e-scooter, you've only got to go and show your proof of ownership. You don't have to show that you've got insurance, so people can go just along with that. So it's one of those anomalies within the law. The law does this thing, it just throws a wobbly at us in certain situations. So that's where we stand in relation to that. We will take action when we see it, but I don't think we're going to have any particular drive in relation to any of those things. Not as a Suffolk driver. We may do something locally as a day of action somewhere when we plan things like that, so we'll do that. Another thing is antisocial behaviour. So the Safer Neighbourhood teams, we manage all the antisocial behaviour in all the towns across Forest Heath. So we have 3 teams, one that has responsibility for Newmarket, one that has Mildenhall, and mine, which is Brandon and Lakenheath. We particularly manage all of the high-risk ASB stuff that goes into the ASB meetings with the council and other partners such as housing, mental health, other services and such like. And we work on those until we get a decent result and resolve the issues. That's always our intention. We run what's called clean out my head, PSP, problem solving plan, on our wonderful crime recording system, which tells us all the different things that we should do when we document everything and all of that stuff, and we have all these wonderful meetings and we go out and we do action. At the moment in an area in Mildenhall, I've got 2 covert cameras that are installed in people's houses to catch the problems with children that are causing absolute havoc on a particular estate. So far we've had 15 children that have been identified, because it's fantastic imagery that we get from that. We pop into the local academy, and wonderful teacher says, yeah, that's little Johnny, he lives at such and such. So we go around and we speak to little Johnny, where he lives with his mum and dad, who are generally absolutely horrified at their wonderful little Johnny's behaviour, because little Johnny has never done a thing wrong in his life in front of his parents, but oh boy, when he's not being watched with his parents, oh, he's up to all sorts of mischief. So we've done that 15 times so far, because the criminal justice system doesn't want us to criminalise juveniles. Okay, so we start off on the softly. If they don't take any notice, then we just ramp everything up, because we've given them all their chances. We have had 2 juveniles from last year that went through that same route, and they've been into court several times, and they continue to breach their court-issued orders. And we just continue that same route, and both of them are back into court again very shortly for graffiti offences around Mildenhall as well. So we are on top of them. It's just very time consuming, there's a lot of work that goes into it. So that's where we are. We are acting on all of these things. If people report them, it gets recorded. We have this wonderful system called Athena. I believe is it the Greek goddess of knowledge. That's where I'll end that one. But anyway, the next thing is speeding, and I'm going to hand over to Richard here, because Richard is our community engagement officer. He's come to Forest Heath wonderfully from September last year.
Yeah.
September, and he has just taken this role by the scruff of the neck, and he's shaking the insides of it out everywhere, and he's doing all sorts. And speeding is one of those things. And I'll let you tell, well, you probably know what he does, but I'll let him introduce himself and what he does.
Very kind of you, take a breath. So I'm Richard Smith, I am the new, quite old now, Community Engagement Officer for Forest Heath, covering the whole area down to Newmarket. One of the key elements of the role, or the part I enjoy, I did about a year and a half in Ipswich, doing the same sort of role. So I am pleased to be back to the west of the county and back over this way. Ipswich is quite intense. Brief history on me. The last role I worked in transport. I used to run a coach and bus business called Galloway, based over at Stowmarket. I was the director for the business for a number of years before we sold the business. Suffolk's been very kind to me personally, so it's my time now after doing that, leading businesses, to actually give a bit back. So that's why I chose to do this role. So a year and a half in Ipswich, glad to get back over this way. And the key element, old school Bobby. That's what I like to think my role is. Out on the street, get to meet people. The work I've done within this community, my priority has been children. So it's been getting into Breckland, it's been getting to the local primary schools, working to get that relationship started. You know, to break down the barriers of police, to say, get beyond the uniform, get to know me as a person. I'm PC Rich. We stand a chance once I've met a child 2 or 3 times, then we've got to go in and we can build that relationship. And that's where a lot of the issues, the ASB, the localised problems come in, where children develop to be excluded from school, get more involved in potential with drugs and this type of thing. So if I can fend that off at an early age, we can get some positive outcomes. And as with the issues we've had with the ASB as such in Mildenhall, again, it's working with families, working with children, working in schools. If they already know you, you've got that in. You've got a fighting chance to make a difference. Because when they get to high school, once we've done the second, you tend to have lost them by that point. So it's important you make the relationships early. As for speeding, we're quite keen to encourage more community speed watch teams to develop within communities. We appreciate, obviously, we need to have a part to reduce the speeding as well, which we are doing in key areas. When things are reported and fed into us, we're getting out, and we've got some members of our team, including myself, that will get out with the speed gun and look to positively engage with the speeders within our community and issue them with tickets. And it's about visibility. And that's where the community speed watches come in. We would openly welcome anybody else that wants to be part of that. We would need 6 members within that community to be part of that process. I can train them up, give them all the kit, everything that they need, and it just gives us more of a consistent approach. We've also got the safety camera team that come out from Bury St Edmunds and are frequent in this area of coming out. And again, they're the ones that will do the automatic ticketing process. If you've got speeding, that will automatically get a letter to the post to say you've been speeding. I work hand in hand with those. So if we've got a particular area where we're concerned about, we can put the strips down, we can survey an area, and if it looks then that matches that there is a problem with speeding, then obviously we can get the safety camera team to come in. We can do some localised work to support. It tends to be 50-50 when people report, say there's issues with speeding, when we then go and do the reviews as to if there is actually a problem or an issue. Sometimes it's a perceived problem when actually potentially it isn't, but I think it's boots on the ground. So for us to get out there, you know, show that we're highly visible, get out and about, engage with members of the community. But yeah, there's a lot we can do. That tends to be one of the biggest issues within rural communities, and a drain on our resource. I mean, I try and put a lot of our information on social media, and you'll see the amount of accidents our teams have to attend within this community, Mildenhall and Newmarket, and that takes a lot of resourcing right across the emergency services to actually, you know, work and resolve issues. So, you know, I get a lot of negative press on social media when I put information about where we've been, the type of work we've been doing in the community. You know, there's a lot of haters that don't want us to be there, but we just want everyone to be safe. You know, we don't want to catch people speeding. We want to educate to say, look, just don't do it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Good job. Any questions for us?
Councillor Whittam?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for a very comprehensive introduction. I hope this is the first, and we will continue despite the difficulties of your duties and our timings. One of the questions I get asked quite often in this town particularly are cars that are obviously either highly modified or look stunning, or others that are, but the common factor is that they sound as if they have no exhaust system, and when they are on the overrun, all you get is backfiring. And that disturbs particularly a lot of young people with children, particularly along the London Road, Thetford Road and Bury Road, because it wakes their kids up. It is absolutely terrible. Is there anything that you can do about this? Because as far as I know, to pass an MOT, you have to be within certain sound levels.
I can answer that one. As part of a lot of our work that we do on the SNT is volume crime. So the low level counts that come in, a count is where somebody calls in and has created an event as such for us to deal with. So we manage all and deal with all of the lower level stuff that doesn't require an emergency response. That takes up a huge amount of our time anyway. But I'm very much, I don't believe that should be the major focus in relation to what we should be doing, and we should be sort of trying to tackle these community type issues a lot more the way we used to do many years ago when I used to do this role prior to going into custody. So just very fortunately, and obviously I had no priming in relation to this, but one of my team has just put an operation order together to arrange for our roads policing and local units to do exactly that with exhausts, because if it's over a certain decibel, then it becomes illegal and they can be given a ticket, or the vehicle can be taken off the road. I can't remember the correct term.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we can give them
Doesn't mean construction and use.
For them to say a particular notice, to cease and persist, so that if they carry on and do something, I mean, I had a lot of work in Ipswich where we were a lot of classified supposed to buy racers, you know, with the suited cars, a lot of them professionals that put a lot of investment into these vehicles.
Oh yeah,
so we do
some
a lot of
are
work
stunning.
with the community. So if it's specific areas, obviously we can then proactively police. The problem then tends to be, once you've achieved in one area, you will move that problem onto another area. So it can be quite a hard thing. So I think some of the focus, you know, that Pete's talking about is the work we can do to get a number of key people together with the correct skill sets. So our traffic team that have got the devices to be able to measure, and we do specific targeted patrols and approaches on a number of different occasions. And then that's, you know, we can then start to issue the tickets. They'll then have to take the vehicles in to get them re-MOT'd. You know, if they've taken the baffles out, they'll have to put the baffles in. The challenge then comes, it's just you're always going to be policing that, unfortunately. There's going to be an onward requirement, because if all they have to do on some vehicles is put the baffles back in, obviously it's as easy as screwing a nut to pull them back out again when it's served. So it's recognising specific offenders. We then can put intelligence into our systems that flag up to traffic officers. Traffic officers do a lot of work in this community, in this area. You know, come up this way, do a lot of our teams from Bury come up this way, and supporters. So if a particular vehicle and a number plate comes up on their systems, you know, the ANPR systems, then they will look to do active stops, and it makes it uncomfortable for people. I think that's the best way we can proactively work it going forward.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, one thing that does occur to me, that if these people have heavily modified a car but haven't fully informed their insurance company, isn't that another avenue to take them off the road?
Plates, yeah, all that.
Yeah.
Number plates that aren't correctly spaced, anything like that, they're voided.
And finally, I've heard it said around the town by various people, I'm going to find out where he lives, and I've got a can of expanding foam.
we couldn't advocate that, obviously.
No, obviously not, but it would stop them.
No comments.
Okay, any other questions? You got a question?
Yes, can I ask a question, please? I just wonder if, in the past, there have been accidents from the American military personnel, and I just wondered if you have actively liaised with the base in terms of, obviously, the Americans drive on the other side of the road, whether you do in any way have some sort of liaison with them?
Yeah, again, another one of my team. He's kind of like an unofficial base liaison officer, so he's on the base an awful lot. He's working with the right people in relation to driving standards from our cousins from over the water.
Good.
They're educated when they land, so when they come over here, there are a number of elements of literature that are given to them, and they're proactively supporting police. We've built up a really good relationship with the base. That's always been there, but they are now more supportive than ever of any issues and problems, be it drink drive or anything like that, as to how they are managing their resource, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So we've seen, we're currently the best place I think we've ever been in how they will look to proactively support us as police in robustly dealing with staff that obviously step out of line. So I think that's real positive from their point of view. They're really supporting us.
Good, because of course you did have that. There was that accident towards Milton Hall involving police officers with American member.
Obviously the investigations are ongoing, so we can't.
No, I'm not saying that, but I wanted to know if there was some sort of.
No, they're very supportive of us, of police, very robustly dealing with their staff. We couldn't ask any more of them, to be fair, so yeah, it's a real strong relationship.
Yeah, I was going to say that, and obviously going forward is better liaison between to try and prevent those sort of things happening in the future. That's all.
Yeah, obviously from their point of view, obviously, as from a police point of view, obviously they want their serving officers to be portrayed in a positive light and not have those negatives. So they're very good at supporting us and dealing with them robustly.
Yes.
So it's good.
Good, thank you very much.
I've been impressed. I've only been here a short time, and yeah, it's very good.
Good, thank you very much.
I think I've got a question from behind you, I'm afraid.
Well, yeah.
My name's Annette. Just a question to ask. We have a drug problem in Brandon. Do you have any proposals of how to stop what is going on? Because there's a lot of stealing and drug pushing is getting really bad.
Okay. Yeah, again, I can answer that one because I'm leading on operations for a few weeks' time. We have another one of our county lines intensification weeks. So I've got warrants that have been sworn out, days of action, checks on vulnerable people who are the drug users themselves. They're very, very much open to cookery, and that's where the county lines comes in. A drug dealer will move somebody in to their flat and deal from there until, and they'll just roll from there onwards. So we're doing all that work. I have to say I have very little that I can action in Brandon because it's not at the scale that other places are within this area. And so I have to direct resources into the relevant places where there's the biggest impact, because that is pretty much how we're all faced these days. I have to justify why I'm doing one where I've had one piece of intelligence that Johnny is smoking cannabis inside his flat. Why am I smashing the door down on that one? But I'm leaving another one where there's intelligence that thousands of pounds worth of Class A drugs have been sold from the premises where the vulnerable person has been exploited to that degree. I don't have anything in Brandon, and I'm researching. I'm doing this at the moment for this operation in 2 weeks' time. There's nothing in Brandon that is sufficient to enable me to get a warrant out in magistrates.
So if we put it on a level, so when I just came from Ipswich, we had 10 county lines operating within Ipswich. So 10 county lines coming in from the Met Police area, coming in from Liverpool, from Manchester, drawing in. Within Forest Heath, we had one. County Line coming in. Very different, not coming to this area, was drawing themselves into the Newmarket area and distributing from that point in time. So it is a very big problem. In other parts of Suffolk, a lot bigger than it is within this locality. But obviously, that said, we're very much intelligence-led. We need 3 strands of intelligence as a rule of thumb to be able to develop that intelligence, if that makes sense. So 3 key strands to allow us to develop to a point to get a warrant to be able to knock a door in. And I think that's sometimes where we're lacking. The communities potentially aren't giving us the information's not coming through as much as it could. A lot of information is known and people aren't willing to support and share that information. So I think if wherever that information is coming from, we can look to develop that, feed that into us, that can then lead to us getting warrants and doing some positive action. At the moment, the intelligence that's been fed through and is coming through to us isn't sufficient potentially to allow us to do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I can also add, on top of all of that as well, I also action that lower level intelligence. It doesn't give me a power to smash a door down, but nothing can stop me from knocking on somebody's door, having a chat, having a bit of a smell, and see what we come across at that particular point in time, because that's where my experience, my knowledge as a sergeant of, well, for 15 years I've been a sergeant, 19 years in the police. I know my legislation, I know my powers, and I know how I can get into something where through just using those skills, and I can teach my younger officers exactly the same thing in relation to that. So it's not all doom and gloom that somebody is doing a little bit here and a little bit there and they're getting away with it all the time, because we may well come and knock on the door and say, oh, it smells a bit ripe in here, mate. We're just going to do a quick search on you. It's under Section 23 of the Misuse of Drugs Act. And then we go along those lines, because that particular search can be done anywhere, in private or public. I've just got to have those grounds to do it. So I can knock on anybody's door that I want to. If I open it and I smell something, we're going in and we're taking action. We did that on a previous one. Trying to think the last time I had that opportunity, I think it was towards the end of September last year. And out of 4 doors that we knocked on, 3 we got positive results. The 4th one, there's nobody home.
Surprise.
As a rule of thumb, we know the people. So it's all about developing that, and that's why my role on the streets, and obviously we're trying to get to a point, so I'm going to be more available on the marketplace and work my way around Brandon to be key places and publicise that on social media, because it's where people can come up and have that conversation. That's just vital for us. It's actually being on the streets.
Yeah.
So just a really, really positive aspect in relation to that. Unfortunately, it's Newmarket. I'd love to do it in Brandon, because this is my patch, this is where I do things, but it ended up being in Newmarket because a warrant was done in Newmarket on the back of that. The tenant that was facilitating the drug dealing from that particular flat was moved out on the 20th of December because we got a closure order on it. That closure order will see us having that flat totally repossessed from them once the housing provider gets their day in court to go for mandatory possession. And as I was going up the stairs, I had a little jingle that was going through my head that is gonna be homeless this Christmas. Sorry, bit of a sense of humour thing there that goes with me. If you're going to deal drugs and we get to do, we can be really smug at the end of it.
Yeah.
So we do want to do this. I'm passionate about that type of thing, both for the people who are addicts that get exploited and their safety. And I know of some horrific things, and I can go back in time. I am going to go back in time. So 2.5 years ago, nearly 3 years ago, I came out of custody and came out to here. We had a really vile person that was operating in Brandon. You would know nothing about this person, but I ramped him up, and he was using, apologies, but sexual violence against men and women to exploit them and to make them deal. I had a newly formed serious crime disruption team, got involved with that. They were right on top of him, and then somebody else went and spoilt it all for us because they stabbed him and then he's disappeared somewhere. So that's the sort of thing. So we had that going on in Brandon. That was 2 years ago. And that was picked up by me from this person who, and again, a tiny little bit of community intelligence that came from that. We need to watch out for this guy. Okay, so who's this guy? And we asked about who this guy is, and then somebody came forward and said, there's stuff that they told us. So we have taken a really, really nasty piece of work off the streets of Brandon, but we have nothing to show for it because somebody else did the job for us in the end. But we were right on top of it.
And we're educating the children, so it's all about exploitation, count lines, online safety. People are looking to reach out to them in their safe zones, in the bedrooms. So I think it starts young. So a lot of it's about the education element, because they're maybe a little bit more naive to it. Where in Ipswich it's everywhere. Here you just don't see people trying to exploit them. So again, it's that early message just to talk to people about it.
Okay. I think we've got one from Henry in the corner.
Some of the questions have actually been answered, about where your information comes from the public, does it?
Yeah.
See, this, I mean, I actually had a customer knock on my door saying about how is antisocial behaviour. And I said, oh, smell cannabis. And I said, well, you're welcome to come in. Didn't happen. It's like you can walk up the high street in Brandon and smell it probably 10 times.
Yeah.
You know, so where does this end? I mean, what am I meant to do? So it's in next door, she actually asked me, well, where's it coming from? And I don't know where it's coming from. Use your wits, you know.
It's very, very difficult.
Yeah.
If I were to, if you gave me a team of 100 people, I could have them flat out working on the smell of cannabis everywhere and walking up and down every high street smelling cannabis and dealing with that. I just don't have the resources to be able to deal with everything. So it's putting those resources into the places where it's causing the most harm. You know, I have to say, forgive me if I'm wrong, and if people think, but if somebody's walking down a high street and they're smoking a bit of cannabis, immediately at that point in time is not causing a huge issue or danger to anybody else around. Yes, they shouldn't be doing it. Yes, they shouldn't have loud exhaust. Yes, they shouldn't have dark tints on the things. We can't legislate and we can't target what people shouldn't be doing because people shouldn't be doing them. But we can't deal with everything that it's doing. So we're targeting our resources and we're targeting to where the most damage is being done. And I guarantee you, because this is my thing, this is what I love doing. I didn't join the police to come to parish council meetings, let me reassure you. But I certainly reached an age a few years ago where I started enjoying gardening, and I also joined the parish council as well myself. So for all of those that are younger than me that say, oh, that never happened to me, oh boy, it's waiting for you. So, but yes, I joined this because I like to knock doors in, I like to deal with bad people, I like to deal with people that scare the absolute crap out of me, to be honest, and I did that in custody an awful lot, and I'm still here to tell the tale because that's what I enjoy doing. Okay, and if we have it in Brandon, we will knock some doors in and we'll certainly share that information with you once we've done it.
Perfect, thanks for coming. It's been very,
Yes.
very nice to have you here.
That's fine. Just look to social media, so we'll try and update more information on there. I am going off the radar for a back operation for a few weeks, so I don't think I've dropped off the earth. Well, it's going to take me a few weeks to recover, which I do apologise for. But yeah,
We'll just get better soon.
yeah.
Yes.
Hopefully, yes. Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on to item number 6, to confirm the minutes from the Brandon Town Council preset meeting held on Wednesday, the 4th of January 2023. I'll propose them. Councillor Evans has seconded. I think it's already been brought to my attention. There's one fault on there. It's at the top. It says we held a virtual meeting with Microsoft Teams, but I'm pretty sure we were all here, so we need to amend that one.
Done, so.
Yeah. Any other points before we vote? Okay, those in favour of those minutes?
I was against.
Okay, anybody against? Abstentions? Okay, so move on. The next one is to approve the minutes of the Brandon Town Council full meeting held on Monday, the 9th of January. I'll propose. Councillor Everton, second. Any comments before we move to the vote? Okay. Those in favour of those minutes? Okay.
I can't vote.
That's fine, yeah, you won't, yeah. Any,
That will be noted.
Sorry, Chair.
sorry,
On the first one, I abstained because I left the
you
meeting.
did, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that will be noted,
Yeah.
so don't worry.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody against those minutes? Any abstentions from those minutes? Okay. We'll move on to item number 7, matters arising. Many items on those 2 minutes we just talked about. Any matters arising? I've got nothing. Okay. Item number 8, any urgent business? Nobody's said anything to me, so I'm assuming not. I've got nothing. Okay. Item number 9, to receive a written report from the town clerk. We've all got that. You can make a comment. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question for the clerk. Have we had a resignation in the council, Graham, or not?
We have had one that's been posted, yes.
Because I haven't got it in the paperwork here at all. I haven't seen that. I just heard it through the grapevine.
Yeah, it's been posted on the notice board outside. So
Oh, okay.
yes, Councillor Whittam
And
resigned.
the-
No, not with Whiteman.
Sorry.
Unless he hasn't told me.
I'll see you later.
Sorry. Yes, Councillor Whiteman, I
And
beg
the-
your pardon.
And the other thing, Mr. Chairman, Graham, you mentioned in your clerk's report that there are other towns in the area with an 18 or 20% increase in their. Could you tell me which towns they are?
One that comes to mind that I was made aware of quite early on was Haverhill. They were proposing 18%, which I believe went through.
Any other towns?
Thetford, I believe, was quite a large increase as well. I can't remember exactly what theirs was.
Okay, because I was at the recent PAS meeting and the average increase for parishes was 9.5%, which is quite a little bit lower than what you've.
Yeah, well, that's an average. That's an average.
Stated.
So you're going to get extremes of either
Yeah.
end of that.
Okay, well at least we've learned that Haverhill's got to get their house in order. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Okay, item number 10, it's the monthly public forum. I'll propose we suspend standing orders again. You seconded that?
I are.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so those in favour of suspending standing orders again for that one? I think all of us. Okay, so any members of the public? You can. We'll start off with the county councillor as well as usual.
Yeah, so start at county.
Yeah? We'll start with county and district councillors and then we'll go on to the public just in case you've got any questions for those guys at the same time.
Thank you,
Councillor Caniac.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I said earlier, I will give you details on the meeting I had with the primary care, and it's quite an important meeting. And Graham was there,
Yes.
our clerk. Phil was there. Graham was taking notes. Phil was there as a witness. We had Kevin Holmes, manager at Forest Heath, Dr. Hanicat, partner at Forest Heath Surgery, James Callahan, primary care manager, and I'll give you these names for the minutes later on, Graham, so you haven't got to panic. Elizabeth Maloney, who's Deputy Director of Integrated Care, and Sarah Porway, Head of Primary Care. So we had the great and the good there, that's for sure. And we had the meeting at the Forest Surgery at 11 o'clock. So there are all the details. The first thing they told me, as I said earlier, that they're a private business and they need to make money. And I thought that, being in the medical business, I thought that their priority was perhaps with the well-being of the patients and not packing them off to other towns to have a blood test, especially since we've always had the blood test in the town. We went along and we requested to reinstate the full phlebotomy service. Simple as that. They couldn't give us any reassurances and they went off on a waffle. There was a review coming, they don't know when it's going to be started, they don't know when that's going to be completed. It was all very ambiguous and all very vague. And that's been confirmed in this letter in Brandon Life last Friday. Smoke and mirrors. I asked for a small concession from them. And they couldn't even give me a concession. But what they suggested was that we bus the people to Mildenhall and we pay for the transport. That's correct, isn't it, Mr. Wynne? And we pay for. So I've got a price. It's going to be roughly £80 a trip to take people to Mildenhall. We could be once a week, it could be twice a week, it could be 3 times. We don't know, because they wouldn't tell us. They wouldn't give us the numbers. So tonight, I asked my fellow councillors, do we agree to this shuttle service, or do we continue to request a full phlebotomy service in Brandon, which we had before? So I stand before you tonight, and I'm guided what you people think round this table. I had no encouragement at all from primary care people. I am passionate about this. I've had countless complaints about the phlebotomy service. Do we do something about it, or do we shuttle these people to Mildenhall? And we have to find the money for it as well. There's no money from the primary care to take them to Mildenhall. But obviously, we've got Conservative administration in West Suffolk. We've got Conservative members here. Perhaps they can go to the executive and perhaps fund the bus to Mildenhall. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any comments on that?
Yeah.
So,
You said £8 a person. £8 a person for what?
so £80 per trip.
£80 per trip.
Yeah.
That's for a minibus taking several people.
So how much is it per person?
That's per bus, not per person. It's per
Yeah,
bus.
well, how do you know how many people are going to be on the bus?
Well, it's not. It could be one person. It could be 10 people. It's per bus. A bus, minibus goes to Mildenhall. It's going to cost us £80.
Yeah, right. And how do you know what time the bus needs to go?
Well, that's going to be organised. That'll come later. Hang on, that'll come later.
But
Do we
you
want
can't
the
just
bus?
pluck numbers out of the air and say...
I'm not plucking them out of the air. I've done some estimates. I've gone to people and asked them for prices. I'm not plucking. I don't come to this table and pluck things out of the air.
Well, that's what it sounds like. Sorry.
Well, over there, Councillor, and then it'll be you.
Mr. Chairman, I came here tonight as a guest of my own free will, and I am unpaid in the role that I do as House Queen New Suffolk. I have been subjected several times tonight by abuse from Councillor Lacanic. I have found it extremely offensive. You have not only criticised me, you have criticised Haverhill Town Council without knowing any of the facts.
I haven't criticised Haverhill Town. Where have I criticised Haverhill Town
You
Council?
said Haverhill Town Council needs to get their house in
Well, that's
order.
not a criticism.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
They've got a precept increase of
They
20%.
have, and they have got a precept increase because, and you do not know the background.
Mr. Chairman, point of order here. We are here to debate the phlebotomy, right? The cost of the minibus.
And I am quite happy to discuss
Right.
that, Councillor Cannick.
Okay.
I will not be subjected to the constant rudeness.
Raise
across this
the
table.
money for the transport.
You have already made this very political several times tonight.
Raise the money for the transport. Tell the people of
Councillor
Brandon
Cannick,
to raise
you
the money for the
would not-
transport.
You would not behave like this at Suffolk County Council. You would be banned. You would not behave like this at West Suffolk Council, and you did not when I was chair. I call upon this council to call you to order, Councillor Mechanic, because you are out of order.
What are you doing for the phlebotomy service?
What I'm doing for the phlebotomy service, and actually today, we heard today that 2 phlebotomists have been appointed for here. I'm waiting for confirmation of that fact. People are working very hard to achieve really challenging things in an incredibly challenging
Chairman,
time.
are we going to
I have
debate the
no
cost of the
objection.
minibus? She's had her say. That was my report.
And one answer to your question, Councillor Mechanic, which your members of the public asked you, how many people will need to go? I think I said to you earlier, I had asked for a report on how many bleeds are going out of the area on average, and we are waiting for that report back. Perhaps when we have that report back, we then have a robust situation where we can say we know that on average so many people are going out a month, and then we have something to work on to say what it would cost and why we then, well, it would actually be cheaper to get a phlebotomist here than to try and ship people out of the area. Without that particular element of information, which I did state earlier, we have not yet got, and I am waiting for it, and I will share it with you happily when it arrives. But I would be very grateful if you would really control your mannerisms, because you are quite out of order, Councillor.
Absolutely, absolutely. What are you going to do about that? Are we agreed on the... Do we want to bus the people to Mildenhall, yes or no? Because I need to go back to the primary care people.
Unless you've got more facts.
Yeah, we'll get, yeah, Councillor Everington quickly.
You cannot make a decision until you know the numbers you're talking about.
Okay, Councillor Whittam?
Thank you. Is this my district report? And
You can, yeah.
okay, well, I'll follow on with the phlebotomy thing. Yes, I was at that meeting, and as I understood it from the list of people that we saw, there were two short-term and one long-term solutions that they're trying to work on. The long-term, we were told that they're looking at maybe later this year, early next financial year, to be able to put something into place for Brandon. They recognise that Brandon is one of their top priority areas due to the hate to say it, the age and needs of quite a large proportion of our residents. So they are working on it. A lot of it revolves around more money for the GP practices, which are, as has been said before, private businesses. They're not part of the NHS, but to give them more money to provide a phlebotomy service. And again, as has already been said, if you employ a phlebotomist, and believe me, I've done it as a qualified nurse, it is a boring job. And currently, a phlebotomist would be paid the minimum wage. And after a few months, they will think, I quite like working in the health service, but I'm not going to keep doing it for this, so I'm going to move on and train as a nurse, or train as a physio, or train as a radiographer, or do something to enhance my skill set and earning ability. And that's what happens. The other thing that was noted by the practice manager from Forest Surgery, I don't know whether it was a practice manager or it was a business manager or what, he said we have 8 consulting rooms, 2 of which are used by nurses, the rest by doctors. If we put a phlebotomist in it, we are going to lose either a nurse or a doctor. We don't have the space. So that is the state of the long term. We are, in the long term, they would be looking for somewhere. And I mean, the suggestion around the table, not just from me, but for Councillor Lacanic was as well. Well, West Suffolk had just spent a lot of money on enhancing services at our sports centre on the Remembrance playing field and incorporated health into that mix. Surely there must be space there. That is something, no doubt, they and we will be looking at. The 2 short-term measures, again, one involved putting more money in the short term into the doctor's practice. The same answer was 1 recruitment and retainment and 2 space. The second one was indeed busing people from here to Mildenhall, Newmarket or Bury. The idea was that they would, okay, so the surgery will tell us how many people have got to go and on what day they have been booked. They would block book, because it's appointment, for either Newmarket, Mildenhall Hub or Bury St Edmunds Hospital for their phlebotomy, and we would drive those people over in a minibus. And quite rightly, Councillor Lacanic has done his research, and it's approximately £80, basing it on an hour trip backwards and forwards. The figures, I was led to believe, would come from the Forest Surgery and who has been actually requested to have a blood test. And that basically is as far as I can say. Yes, it's an ongoing thing. Councillor Palmer's working on it. Councillor Buchanan's working on it. I'm certainly working on it. I don't want there to be any divide between us all doing so, because perhaps better we're combined rather than fragmented. So that would be that on that issue.
So, do you want the bus or not?
Once we've got the figures, I think you can
Once we've got the figures and we can work on this behind in the background, it's not a question as to whether we are doing it or not at the moment. It's still work in progress as far as I see it. To move on to other things, the West Suffolk Council, and I've mentioned it around this table before, are planning to build a new sports centre and swimming pool in Bury St Edmunds on Western Way at the cost estimated at the moment in the first year of £40 million. I and other councillors, certainly Councillor Buchanan, have consistently voted against this because for what we see, there is absolutely nothing wrong with the sports centre and swimming pool that they have now, and the new proposed one adds nothing to what is already available. The argument they are giving is that, well, if we refurbish the old one, it's going to cost 20 million and it'll only just... And I don't accept that, nor does Councillor Buchanan. It doesn't cost 20 million to upgrade the heating system for the pool and put a few solar panels on the roof and rewire the place to meet Part 18 of the regulations. Nowhere near. At the last meeting, it went to 4 votes for, 4 votes against, and it was the chairman's vote that pushed it through to accept this medium-term budget with this in there. So I can assure you that the council over there are starting to listen to sense. And it also involves the disparity with street lighting. When we merged with the old St Edmundsbury area, and I've said it all round this table before, Forest Heath paid lower business, council tax, that's the thing, than the old St Edmundsbury area. The new West Suffolk Council, the amalgam of the two, decided that they wanted to increase our council tax to be in line with the old St Edmundsbury area. However, there's one difference. We at parish and town council levels pay for our street lighting. And Graham Cocker, town clerk, can give you the figures that we pay and our projected figures. And I'm not asking you to do it now, Graham, so I'm not putting you on the spot. But it's a considerable sum. Bury St Edmunds Town Council doesn't pay that, because the West Suffolk does.
Right, we do know that. We've gone through this before.
We think that that is unfair. Why should we pay, in effect, twice for our street lighting? And again, there is no provision in this medium-term budget that we were asked to vote on over there the other day for that. So again, that is another reason why I refuse to vote for it. It is going to be an ongoing battle, and we will fight it on behalf of Brandon.
So has Councillor Whittam got any news we haven't heard before?
Okay.
The fish and chip shop's just shut.
Councillor Palmer, have you got a district report?
Those that I read my letter in the Brandon Life, and I presume everybody did. That states on there, we're trying to get a temporary solution by March, and that's in the town. So we should have 2 philoptonists in the town by March time. So that will be an issue. The long-term solution, they need some evidence regarding it. And the point of this letter was to get people to respond to it, so I can present the evidence to Liz, okay, Maloney, so I can present the evidence. And I've had numerous letters come in, long emails, and on Sunday I forward them all to them, okay, to her, and there'll be more coming in, and as they come in, I'll forward them. So they are, once they've got the evidence, they can look for a long-term solution in Brandon. So that's what we're working towards. So the short term should be in March, and the long term should be September. That's what I'm working towards. Other than that, I can't say everything else what's been said on the table has already been said, so I can't repeat anything.
Okay, you want to ask Dave a question, yeah?
Just want to come back to you on that, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to change the subject completely. I'd like to thank the town keepers for replacing the 2 lime trees in the avenue. If we restore that avenue to its former glory, if we lose everything else, at least we'll still have the avenue. And finally, Chairman, I went up into the turret there. I synchronised the striking mechanism there. So I've saved the town council 8,000 quid, because that's what the estimate was going to be, to synchronise and repair the winding mechanism. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any members of the public? Who wants to go first? You can go first, Steve.
I just wanted to thank our visitor for coming today and giving such a concise and informative and thorough report on this phlebotomy service, and I just apologise for those councillors that don't know how to behave.
Annette?
Yes, I just wanted to say that it's not down the surgery, not only does the bloods, they were a very important part of the surgery, because you could go there and have your B12 injection. If you come out of hospital and you needed your dressing changed frequently, they were there to do it. So they weren't just about bloods. It was a very important part where they supported the doctors as well as the hospital. And it's very important that they continue and hopefully continue to do that job. Thank you.
Have you got something to bring it home?
Yeah, just staying on the same subject, I'm a bit confused. Do the people that come and take the blood actually get paid for this? It's a separate thing, because when I had one of the take it, I thought it was a nurse.
It
I thought that would be part of the
doesn't need to
service.
be. It doesn't need to be a qualified nurse, or it can be a care assistant. They go through specialist training. So the phlebotomists at West Suffolk Hospital are very often just phlebotomists. I don't mean just, that's a really bad word to use, sorry. They are phlebotomists, that's their career. The ones who, when you go in and you get your butcher's ticket and you go in, that's at that time what they do. But as I think Councillor Whittam said, it quite is a fairly mindless job after a year, and that's why people move on. But doctors can do it, nurses can do it, care assistants can do it. And in fact, one of the things I did talk to Liz Mahoney about was whether, I don't want to get too involved in this conversation because I am not the decision maker, but I am in conversation with other people who potentially can be phlebotomists and are in your area. And so, I mean, potentially there are a lot of other people who could take blood. The challenge isn't just taking the blood though. You've got to get that blood to the hospital, to the lab. And secondly, you've got to be able to have the access to the computer equipment. So it's got to be somebody who can be on the doctor's, you know, to sign on to your record. So it's not quite as straightforward in terms of just taking blood.
Well, this is it, because I mean, as I had a stroke, and I used to have my blood taken last time I went up in November, and I just got given a leaflet saying go to Milton Hall and whatever. Not like any sort of like record. You say you want a record of people asking you. Well, how are they actually going to get this record?
And that's what I did say earlier. I'm asking primary care. That's the people who.
Well, the receptionist.
No. So
she's the one that just came
no,
in.
No. So I'm asking them to find out the people, the people above your GP surgery who sit above it, who pay them. I'm asking them to tell us how many blood requests the surgery had. So let's say in a month the surgery asked 100 patients to have blood tests, but they only did 50, then we know that 50 had to go somewhere else. That's the information we need. And at the moment we don't have it. I don't know why, because I would have thought that was a fairly simple piece of equipment, of information. But we do need to know, on average, how many a month are they not doing and how many are being asked to go to other places. And that's the information that Councillor Mechanic needs in order to establish how many people need transport to go somewhere else. And without that bit of equipment, so that's the kind of information that we need. But hopefully with the possible new phlebotomists who are coming in the area, that might get skewed. So, but we will progress that. I hope
as
that.
the lady said, as I went for my blood test last night, I said I haven't had my blood cholesterol.
I'm sorry, I can't quite hear what you're saying.
I said, my last blood test, which I actually paused in a way because I said I haven't had one, even before the November one was supposed to happen. But before that, I was in there. I said I haven't had my blood pressure or my cholesterol checked, and I came back from after a stroke out of hospital. And she said, I'll do that for you now. So, this is the sort of thing you get from the nurse, It's just it's the extra sort of little bits and pieces.
Yeah, they have the capability. They have the capability to do it. And obviously, as you now have a long-term medical condition, you should have an annual one automatically around the time of your birthday. That's where they're trying to set those in. And the care assistant can even, if they're trained in phlebotomy, they can do that for you. But, hopefully we'll have a little bit more information that Councillor Mechanic and Councillor Palmer can work on in Brandon for you.
Councillor Moore, I think you want to make a comment.
Yeah, we talked about transporting people to the various places. Quite how would that work? I've had to have several blood tests of late, and I've had to go to Milton Hall Heb. But I also have to have blood tests through Bury Hospital. Well, everybody is going to have to coincide with each other if you want to do a block booking. Because if you've got two surgeries here in West Suffolk as well and other places, how would that all work? Because you're going to have if you're talking about £80 for a trip to Milton Hall and back, you're going to have buses running all over the place during the day, and it's going to cost us a lot of money.
I was at the meeting, and the proposal was one place in Brandon to Milton Hall, wait and then come back. It wasn't going to West Suffolk. It was going solely to Milton Hall Hub, where there was a block booking of, say, an hour. So you could deal with 12 patients, a bus full.
Yes, but if you get a call from the hospital, you have to ring and book it. You have to, when you ring the service now, you have to go on what they tell you can have. When you ring up for a blood test, they'll ask you where you would like to go, and Well,
you will go to Milton Hall.
But would that be liaised by everybody?
Sorry, I can answer this one for you, David. Basically, it would be where the GP practice refer you for a blood test.
Yeah.
And it would be for the most vulnerable, elderly or infirm people. It would not be for people who could drive themselves. It is a short-term solution for those who are vulnerable And one incident, and I know it happened, and Councillor Mechanic picked up on this, where an elderly lady in her 80s had taken a bus to Bury for her blood test appointment, and the blood test appointment was at 5 o'clock. Well, if anybody has ever used that bus service, the 86 that comes back from the West Suffolk Hospital, that poor lady must have had roller skates on to get to the bus to get it back. And that is it's for the most vulnerable people in our community. And we already know, because at the meeting, and I've said it this evening, the commissioners of all those folk we saw the other day have already said they know that Brandon is a high priority above some other towns because of the makeup of our population. And I hate to say I'm rapidly approaching that age.
Okay, I think that's it. We'll move on, I think, if that's all right. Okay, we'll move on. So, item number 11, correspondence, and we've all got those.
Yeah.
We need to add there. Item number 12. Wait there.
So, yeah, we've got the two letters sort of about things that we have actually. Where's that from? There we go. Things that we've actually given money to, and particularly in conversation with. We've also received, because Councillor Anir kindly penned a letter of condolence to the royal family, we actually did receive a very nice card back from King Charles.
Well done, Councillor Anir.
Available in the. I might have put your arm up your back.
So if anybody'd like to have a look at it, it's there later on if they'd like to. Yeah, I think if you go up somewhere.
Well, do you want me to pass it along?
Have a look at it as you go along. Okay, so we'll move on. Item number 12, to approve the accounts for January 2023. I'll propose. Councillor Caniac, I think, had his hand up first. So.
Second,
Thank you.
second, Graham.
Okay, so we'll move to a vote for those. Those in favour of the accounts?
Phil? Yeah.
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 Anybody against the accounts?
You abstain?
Abstain.
Yeah, so.
Okay, item number 13, to receive income and expenditure statement against our budget for the year for December 2022. And we'll just note that. Next one is item number 14, to note the minutes of the events committee meeting held on the 12th of January 2023. Noted there. Item number 15, to note the minutes of the planning committee meeting held on the 6th of February 2023. All good? Yeah.
Councillor Price, was there anything that noteworthy on the planning?
No.
Okay. Item number 16, a resolution from Councillor Caniac, so I'll hand over to him.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, that's self-explanatory, really. Last year we sprayed the high street, we treated the weeds, and it looked magnificent. That's the first time in living memory that all the weeds were eradicated in the high street. We got bags of comments on it, so all I ask, Mr. Chairman, is the council continues the good work, spraying the weeds 3 times over the whole of the year. Mr. Chairman, do I have a seconder?
Councillor Whitmer seconded that. Any comments? Penny, you had, I think you did have your hand up before, and what did you say?
The staff didn't actually spray it 3 times, I don't believe.
No. Sorry?
I don't believe they sprayed the high street 3 times.
No, you haven't.
Okay, well, perhaps they sprayed it once.
Because somebody else was doing it.
We had a drought. Perhaps
No,
the weeds didn't.
there was somebody else spraying.
Well, the resolution is, are we going to spray the weeds this year, yes or no?
Yes,
Not
but you
happened
can't
last
spray
year.
them if somebody else is doing them as well, councillor.
Well,
There's only a certain amount of weed killer you can put down.
well, when you see the weeds, then you spray them. There's no.
Victor, excuse me, Mr. Chair. There are other people doing it. Is this not a job that should be done by West Suffolk Council?
Well, not specifically because.
Now, hang on a minute. Are West Suffolk Council responsible for the weeds in the High Street?
90% of the weeds, Bob, with the greatest of respect, are in the forecourt of a private house. That's about half a metre or a metre. That's where 90% of the weeds are. So all I'm asking is the town council, like last year, or a council, spray the weeds in the high street. Now, if we spent over £1,000 this Christmas for putting the tree, Christmas trees, on a private building. All I'm asking is we spend a small proportion of that spraying the weeds. If we can do it on a private building, put a Christmas tree on it, then I'm sure the work involved is so small in spraying weeds and the visual effect is so great. All I'm asking is for a clean high street. Do we want a clean high street free of grubby weeds? That's all. Simple as that.
Mr. Chairman, the principle that we are, or have, this year, subsidised the rates to the tune of £40,000. We are asking the residents now to pay twice, because we've already paid one person to do it. We're now going to use our own staff to do it. I think that's taking the pee-wee.
Councillor Palmer, I think you had a...
Yes, West Suffolk Council has expressly committed not to use glyphosate on weeds. So please can Councillor Tannock tell us what sort of spray he's using, and does that mean how does that meet the green environmental agenda, please?
May I respond, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, of course. Good question.
There are other environmentally friendly products. Acetic acid is one. There's different foams. They're all environmentally friendly. We know there's a ban gone in the county for glyphosate. We know that. We voted on that. I personally voted against it, but that was voted on at West Suffolk Council. You weren't actually there, Dave. You weren't in attendance. We voted for the change. There are other alternatives. You could go to the garden centre down the road here at the station. There's 3 or 4 other alternatives. Listen, I didn't realise it was going to be such a big issue, spraying a few weeds. If we can do the Christmas trees, right, at £1,000, I'm sure we can go... Let me tell you what happened last year.
No, we don't need to go through all that. No.
Can you answer the question? What chemical are you going to use then?
Acetic acid.
Acetic acid, okay? And does that meet the green environmental agenda?
Absolutely.
That does.
That's been authorised by the county. That's been authorised by the district.
Okay, because some of these chemicals you sell in DIY places do contain glyphosate. You do know that, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay. Just as long as we know what you're going to use, that's all we're going to do.
Sue's been waiting for a
Sorry?
while. Sue's next.
Right, sorry.
Okay. You go, Sue, you had a question.
I was merely going to support Councillor Brad said what I was going to, is that we're not responsible as a town council. In fact, I would say, Councillor Cannick, that actually you are very keen, as we all were, to reduce the precept as much as possible in this coming financial year. Why would we pay our own town keepers to do the work when it is the responsibility of the district council?
Well, no, it's the responsibility of the private people, but the private people won't do it.
No, well, there's still that indeed. Well, when we would be trespassing then, if our the town people...
Listen, if you're making it complicated, right? You're making it. It's a personal thing, obviously.
I'd just like to ask who the person that was spraying the weeds had no uniform on. We don't know what he was spraying. That is why our town keepers could not do another spray. So,
West Suffolk Council. West Suffolk Council sprayed it, didn't
no,
they?
it wasn't. They always have a uniform, and we know what they're spraying.
Well, we had a remarkable
But don't
person
worry.
who volunteered and came out and did it because probably he was sick of looking at the weeds.
Well, hopefully you'll do it again this year, then, won't you?
I propose that we don't have our people do it.
I'll second that.
Fine.
Well, we'll vote on this subject because if it's that gives you the answer, doesn't it? So we happy to move to a vote?
Yeah, of course
So
we
those
do.
in favour of Councillor Caniac's resolution to
Right.
undertake spraying of the weeds 3 times annually in the High Street as far as Aldi's entrance. So those in favour of that? Okay. Those against? Any abstentions? You got those? And Phil's abstained. Yeah. Okay. Okay, item number 17, a resolution to exclude the public and press. Pursuant to the Public Bodies Emissions from Meetings Act 1960, the public and press be excluded from the meeting temporarily due to the confidential nature of the business. I'll propose, Phil seconded. Those in favour of that, Mark? Anybody need to come for break, feel free. Give me a couple of minutes.
David, are you leaving or are you just leaving?
Because I think he's
No,
building this.
Oh, right, no, no, no.